Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Prime Sports. Today we got episode 13 for you guys. I'm Andre, we got Nico on the other side.
Hey guys, how you guys doing?
Today we got a phenomenal interview lined up for you guys. We got James Duthie. Hope you enjoy. All right, so today we got a special guest. He spent 25 years at TSN. You know him as the guy on the left on the TSN panel. He hosts several events, including the World Cup, Olympics, NHL games, and much more. He has well over 800,000 followers on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. And welcome to the Prime Sports Podcast, James Duthie. How are you doing?
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, it's such an honor to have you on. You've obviously had a long, successful career so far, so with still many years to go. And we want to like kind of go back to your early career, going into the industry. Even as back as a high school kid, what kind of interest did you have? What kind of hobbies did you have? Stuff like that. What kind of kid were you?
Yeah, I was a typical kid. Like I grew up in suburban Ottawa, had a really goofy group of friends, a very eclectic group of friends from all different cultural backgrounds. And I think they influenced me a lot as far as like they were all really funny guys and we make a lot of dumb videos together. So that was probably attributed to where I ended up doing. But I love sports and I wanted to do something in sports. I actually thought I was going to be an NFL player, which was ridiculous since I was 5'10", 145 pounds and as a high school football player. But I think in the back of my mind, I always thought I'd be a sportscaster. Maybe I was just in Ottawa recently for a funeral and a girl that I went to school with, she told me that in grade 8 that I told her I wanted to be a sportscaster, which was an eye opener to me because I don't even remember having that thought that early, but she did. So I guess that was kind of always in the back of my mind.
And you say you were 145. Were you blowing in the wind or?
I was a skinny ass guy. I think I started when I made the high school football team in grade 12, 11, I whatever it was. I started lifting weights and I finally got a little bit of muscle, but I was skinny. I weighed nothing. And even when I like worked out, I got to like 160, big 5'10", 160. So I was a
Brilliant,
beast.
brilliant.
And I just want to like go farther into your career. What do you remember about your first internship and your first gig?
So internship as in like when I was in university.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, your first big like moment getting into the field.
Okay, so I would say there's two things. I'll try to tell them quickly. The first thing I ever did, like I was in fourth year, I took journalism at Carleton, and I hadn't really done anything. You're supposed to be getting experience, taking internships, summer jobs. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I think halfway through fourth year, I went into the campus radio station and volunteered to do news or sports or whatever it was. They gave me a news job. So I'd come in, I think, 2 days a week early in the morning and read the news. And back then, my name was Jake Duthie. It's a long story, but I always liked the name Jake. And so I always thought I'd change my TV name or my radio name. I'd be Jake Duthie. I thought that sounded good on radio. So I would be like Jake Duthie with the morning CKCU news. So that was my first gig. Then a couple months later, like you couldn't graduate Carleton without doing an internship. I think you only had to do one. And so I was very lazy in university and I didn't sign up for one. So with 2 months left in school, I was able to get a 1 week internship with the local TV station, CTV station in Ottawa. And it was a great internship because you actually got to go on TV and do a news report that they would air it. They put it right at the end of the show at 11:30 at night. So I'm
Okay.
not sure, but so I did 3 stories that week. And this is really probably in retrospect the most important week of my life because what happened is one of the reports. So I worked from Monday to Friday. I think I did a pretty good job, I guess. One of the reporters broke his ribs skiing on Saturday. And so they needed somebody to do his shift on Sunday. And I guess I was fresh in their mind. So they called me. I did his shift on Sunday. I went back Monday. I'm still in school. I got 2 months left in school. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I never stopped working. They hired me for the summer. At the end of the summer, they hired me full time. I stayed there for 5 years, and that's where I first started doing sports after doing murders and stuff. And so I often think back and think if that guy hadn't broken his ribs skiing, man, I'd probably be at the drive-through right now. No,
Did you ever tell him? Did you ever tell him that?
Yeah, like thanks, bud.
work in the Wendy's. You don't do that job, is it?
No. Did you ever go back and thank him for breaking his ribs, or?
I haven't heard from him in a long time, but who knows? I guess maybe they would have hired me on anyway for the summer if they liked me. I don't know, but I think a lot, not to get all philosophical with you, but a lot about this business is getting breaks, right, and being in the right place at the right time, and that's, I think, what happened with me.
Absolutely. So a lot of players, usually athletes, they remember their first goal, something like that, something like special for them, memorable. Do you remember, one of those early moments at TSN that kind of replay in your mind?
At TSN?
Yeah.
Well, now I'll give you a couple. Like, one of them was my audition. So I worked at that station in Ottawa for a few years, and I always thought TSN was the place I wanted to go, right? But I didn't. I did news for those early years, so I didn't have much experience in sports, and only got to do sports through a long story that I won't tell you about unless you get bored later. But I got a call, and the Senators had just come into the league, and I was doing a live shot on opening night for the Ottawa Senators. And for whatever, the TSN boss, his name's Keith Pelly, he actually runs the European Golf Tour now. He saw me, and he called me, and offered me an audition. He actually said something really weird. He goes, "Hey, I saw your live hit the other day." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I really like those jeans." And I'm like, "What kind of creeper are you? What are you talking about?" And
Like I was wearing track pants.
yeah, I was wearing jeans and like a dress shirt and a blazer, kind of a casual look. But back then, TV was a little more formal, I guess, where everybody wore suits. And I think he liked that I was relaxed, and it was just weird that the fact that I wore jeans was the one thing he noticed. But so I can remember it was a rainy day. They flew me down for an audition, and I was in the cab, like, going to TSN thinking, this is it, man. Like, this is your one shot. And the whole Eminem thing, right?
Yeah.
Everything started playing in your mind.
I mean, 8 Mile wasn't even out yet, but that's what I was thinking. And I went to sit behind the anchor desk for what was called Sports Desk then. Now it's Sports Center. And Jim Van Horn, who's this old TSN legend you guys might be too young for, he was there, and he was giving me pointers, and you know what, I did pretty good. Like, I didn't blow it. So I did a pretty good audition, and I actually didn't get the job. They called me a few months later and said, "Hey, we have to give the job to somebody internally," but he said, "I really want to hire you." And at the same time, I got a job in Vancouver, and so I moved out to Vancouver. And I remember telling him, "I want to live in Vancouver for a couple of years, so don't call me for a couple of years." And he called me in 6 months and offered me a better job than the one I was up for. So I'll never forget that first audition. And I guess I'll never forget my first show I was hired to host CFL. My first job at TSN was hosting CFL and NBA. A lot of people don't remember that I hosted NBA, and it was my rookie year was the same year as Vince Carter's rookie year. So
that's a good class.
Yeah, that was a really cool thing. In fact, I covered the slam dunk contest that you guys have probably watched on YouTube. I was there, and still one of the coolest moments of my entire career. That building going absolutely insane. But my very first show was the CFL show, and Chris Schultz, who's now passed on, unfortunately, was there, and a guy named Eric Tillman, and everybody was so nervous. We were all rookies, and I didn't really know what the hell I was doing, so I just wanted to get through. But moments stay with you for a long time, man, because it's really kind of surreal to sit there. You're sitting in the big studio going, man, I've been dreaming about this for 10 years.
I bet. So we got broken ribs and we got jeans so far. Yeah. That paves a crazy path. We'll see what comes up later on.
Yeah, there's more.
Go ahead, Nico.
Yeah, moving on. Mark Masters told us about an embarrassing moment he had where he just literally froze up in front of the camera. Do you have any embarrassing moments that you've had in your career?
Yeah, I have plenty. I think anybody who's done live TV for a long time has plenty. Um, we don't
It,
use it. You know, Mark and I have in common is we don't use a teleprompter. If you're watching Sports Center,
wow.
uh, you know, the Sports Center has a teleprompter. Most news shows you watch, they have a teleprompter. We don't use one, and I don't really like them because I find when it's so easy when you're reading a teleprompter. It's just and your mind drifts off to other places. Like I'll be reading an intro thing and I'll be thinking about 18 other things like my golf swing. So I think it keeps your mind sharper when you have to think on your feet and do like we're doing right now. And so I've never used a prompter on hockey. And when Mark's doing his live hits from the rink, he doesn't use a prompter either. And so the only thing is that it makes you a little more naked to the world, right? You have to think about what you're going to say, and if you have a brain cramp, there's no help,
Yeah,
right?
good luck. Yeah.
And so there's many times where I've forgotten where I was going, and I think you get trained as a broadcaster. And if you guys watch TV closely, you'll notice when guys are doing this that you keep talking, but you're not saying anything. Like let's say I was doing it on the panel last night. I'll be like, "All right, so Lisa had 1-0 after one period," and my brain's going, "Where am I? What am I doing now? What's the question I'm supposed to ask?" And yes, they're playing the Dallas Stars tonight with a 1-0 lead. Still 2 periods to go for the Leafs, and you just keep talking and
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
what you try to say. But I had a couple of embarrassing sort of double entendres, which is the funniest stuff in TV. I can remember we were doing a playoff game years ago when TSN had the national rights, and I think the panel was Bob McKenzie and Darren Pang. And I was reading some highlights. So at home, if you're watching on TV, you're seeing the highlights and you're hearing my voice.
Yeah. Voiceovers.
And they give you a very they'll give you a script for highlights, but it'll be a very limited script. So it'll just say second period, Austin Matthews scores from Mitch Marner or whatever, and you're supposed to ad lib the rest. So this was, I believe, the player was Brooks Light on the Washington Capitals, and he scored a goal on a wraparound against the Rangers. But he kind of held the guy off with one arm. And I was tired. The playoffs are crazy, and you're up till 3 o'clock in the morning. And
Can't be bothered.
this was like the next afternoon, so my mind wasn't functioning really well, and I had a very unfortunate choice of words where I said, "All right, in the second period, Washington up 2-1. Here's Brooks Light going around the net. Look at him beating a man off with one arm." And
Why have I never seen this?
And you see, I think it was pre-YouTube and stuff, so thank God. Like anything like that happened today, it's everywhere, right? But
Yeah.
there he is beating a man off with one arm. And I kind of glanced over at Bob and Darren, and they were just like crying instantly, right? And at that point, I lost it, and I couldn't. Like I was just giggling for 2 minutes straight because I couldn't finish the highlights. But there have been numerous things like that, and it doesn't help when you have a bunch of idiots on the panel that are laughing. So that was certainly.
That's incredible.
I'm sure there's worse. I'll tell you, there's one
worse.
There's one, and yeah, you can beep this out if you want. It's not a swear word, but same sort of double entendre. Gino Reda, my favorite one ever. I wrote about this in my book. He was hosting the World Juniors before I did in Halifax, 2003. And he was coming out of a commercial break. And we have these shots that are kind of called bumper shots or hero shots. So, if you come out of commercial sometimes and they're showing you a slow-mo of a goal, and that just to get you back inside the studio. So this was, the player was Brendan Bell, who played on Canada's World Junior team. And it was one of those low-angle shots behind the glass where the player just crashes into the boards. And so Gino had the unfortunate choice of words. He goes, "Welcome back to the World Juniors on TSN. There's Brendan Bell coming in your face all night long."
Wow. The comedy show. This is like, I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting this at 4 o'clock on Friday. Wow.
Sorry. And so, like I said, totally innocent, but
yeah, they don't mean it, but then like 3 seconds later, you're like, oh,
porno. There's actually Twitter accounts that are like porno sports. They take things that sportscasters say and
Yeah, like out of context
yeah.
type of stuff.
But those are kind of the funniest moments that you remember anyway, right? You never remember some panel you did on a Leafs power play. Remember
Yeah.
all the mistakes you made.
Incredible. Well,
Yeah.
you've obviously hosted like several, events over the years. One of them being the 2022 World Cup. A lot of our audience are soccer fans. What was it like covering the World Cup in 2022? Like, what was it like, from the moment you stepped off the plane to like that first on air camera turns red? What was that like?
It was amazing. And not to get all, you know, big picture world on you, but I felt like my life soccer was my first love. I grew up in Victoria where we didn't play hockey. We played soccer all winter. And I came to Ottawa, and before I got into football in high school, soccer was my sport. My dad was like the president of the local association, and so actually somewhere deep in the archives of Canada Soccer, there's a film. They made a coaching film, which starred my dad and my family. I was like 11 years old, and it's really like if it ever surfaces again, it's the funniest thing ever because it's 1980 or something like that, and just I got the worst haircut ever, and it's just pure cheese.
Parachute jerseys.
Yeah, yeah. And I love soccer was my passion, and honestly, one coach destroyed my soccer career. I don't know how it works now if you guys played, but there was always 2 years. Like each level was 2 year ages.
Oh, okay. Now it's just every age.
Yeah.
Yeah, because both my daughters played. But at my time, it was like you go like bantam was 2 years and junior and whatever.
Okay.
And usually at the rep level, they would try to separate it mostly by the 1 years. But if you're a good player, you'd make it up and play with the year guys 1 year older. And so one year, me and my buddy, I think about 16 or 17, we made it like the junior A team, Gloucester Hornets in Ottawa. So
No big deal.
this coach was this Scottish guy, real diehard Scottish guy. So he's the one who decided to keep us on the team. And then, he didn't play us much all year. I thought I worked pretty hard. And then the next year, when we were supposed to be there, he cut me and my friend, both guys that were on the team. So I was really bitter. And that's when I quit soccer and went to football. That's a long-winded story you didn't have to hear. It's just my scars for soccer.
Was the Scottish guy Stephen Caldwell by any chance?
Was it? I won't say his name because I've said it before in a podcast.
Yeah, that's fair.
It must have gotten back to him because I went to a funeral. I've talked a lot about funerals, but I went to another funeral in Ottawa maybe 10 years ago, and he showed up at the funeral because it was, friends. And now he was like 70 years old. But I'm at you're at a reception at the funeral. Everybody's, quiet, paying their respects. And he walks by me and he like whispers in my ear. He goes, "You deserve to be cut." I was like, "What the hell? This is like 30 years ago, buddy. Why are you still tormenting me? I just got over this."
Oh my goodness, that's brilliant.
So because I think either I wrote about it in a book or I talked on other podcasts about how this guy had ruined my soccer career. So somehow it probably got back to him.
Amazing.
So obviously I didn't cover soccer at TSN for a long time. Excuse me. I was fortunate enough to do the Women's World Cup when it was in Canada, which was a really huge thrill, watching Christine Sinclair and Team Canada. And then I covered the women's team in 2012 in London. But I never got to cover any. I did the two MLS cups that Toronto was in. I'm not getting emotional. I have something in my throat. God. Going to Qatar was surreal. I'd followed the men's team forever. And to see them make it and to be there and to be part of it was really cool. It was a very strange experience. Qatar was a very weird place. Obviously all the stuff going on in the background politically.
Mm-hmm.
But to actually, cover a sporting event, it couldn't have been more ideal because you'll never have another World Cup where the whole world is in one city, a city of like 400,000 people, right? It's basically like having the World Cup in
like Hamilton.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
and you go down to the market in the middle of the town, and just it felt like the entire world was there, right? Everybody wearing their different jerseys. So it was logistically a hard event to do, just because I don't want to bore people with TV details, but you couldn't hear in the stadiums, and I couldn't hear my analysts. Like for 80% of the World Cup, for the Canada games, I usually we have these IFBs in our ear, and you can hear the other person's microphone, but that wasn't working, and so I couldn't hear anything they were saying, which was a very strange way to do TV. So if Janine Becky or Julian de Guzman were talking, I basically had to read their lips, and if I couldn't read their lips, I didn't know what they said, which is not a good ideal way to do a panel, but it didn't matter. It was just it was a really surreal experience to be there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find out you were going to be covering the World Cup? Something you've never done before?
That's a good question. And I'm not sure that I remember. Somewhere along the way, one of my bosses called me and just said, is this something you want to do? And I said, yeah. It took me about, a heartbeat to answer, of course.
Yeah.
And, I don't pretend to be, a true football expert, and I respect soccer fans too much to, I don't, when you have to cover hockey full time, and I do the Super Bowl and golf as well, it's hard to be a master of several sports.
Yeah.
And so I don't, though I know what's going on in Premier League and La Liga, etc. I'm not an expert on it. But, as a host, I think your job, I think this World Cup, it's different. I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily hosting Premier League every week or whatever, unless I was following it full time.
Mm-hmm.
But with Canada in the World Cup, you have, all these people that haven't necessarily watched a ton of international football watching this. And so, to be honest, I think one of the reasons they chose me is that my job was to make it palatable for the everyman, right? And it's a really fine line you have to walk, because you have to cater to football fans like you who are knowledgeable, but you also have to cater to people who
are just getting into it. Yeah.
Babies and nobody else on the team. So I think my job as host is to do that, and then you let the experts like Stephen Caldwell and Kevin Kilbane and Janine Becky and Julian and so on do all the other stuff. So it was a true thrill to do it. It's funny, Alistair Johnston, who's of course a fullback on Canada, lived 2 blocks away from me. Now he plays for Celtic, but and his brother Malcolm, who plays in the Whitecaps organization, was like one of my daughter's best friends. So I watched these kids grow up, and then to see a kid from down the street play in the World Cup was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, crazy. So that might be, I don't want to speak for you, but that's probably one of the biggest events you've covered. But you've talked a lot about this one in other interviews and stuff like that, about the 2010 Olympics, which, a lot of us remember what happened there. Up until, that point of the event, is that like the biggest event you've covered at the time?
Yeah, like I have been asked before, what are your favorite memories or your highlights of your career? And it's hard to, rank them 1 to 10, like a SportsCenter top 10 list, but I would usually say those Vancouver Olympics are number one. That's, the World Cup's going to be up there for a long time, but I was always kind of an Olympic geek when I was a kid. And like even at 10 years old, like I would watch every event in the Olympics. Like in the middle of summer, I'd stay home every day and watch. I was just obsessed with it. And to be able to host an Olympics in your home country. And I had a really sweet gig where I was on with the news anchor, Lisa LaFlamme, during the day. We would be on from, I think in, Toronto time, 12 to 6. And then I would go down and do the hockey games from the rink. And so they were super long days. And the Olympics are a funny thing. Anybody who covers one would probably say the same. They're exhausting. So from the beginning they start, you're like counting down to get it over with, because you sleep 3 hours a night. But when it's over, you're really sad, because it's just been this unbelievable experience. And the streets of Vancouver, man, like I'll never experience anything like that. And that's why I was really getting no sleep, because I would go out every night because I couldn't believe how I live in Vancouver, how great it was. It was
He's
just
on
this,
top of the bus.
yeah, the street like full of people the whole time. And I've told the story often. Where our set was, I was probably 30 feet away from where Crosby scored the goal, and almost missed it because I was looking at my phone because my son was playoff game back home, which is like the worst scheduling ever, and a score. And I actually was so nervous and so quiet in that moment that I heard Crosby yell Iggy, and that's why I looked up just in time to see the goal. So yeah, that's always, I think, I don't think I'm going to top that. Hopefully I still have a few more years, like you said, doing this, but I don't think that'll ever be topped, to be in that building and watch Canada have what was a unforgettable Olympics and a perfect ending to it.
Yeah, we actually talked to Mark Masters about this. He said he was covering the event as well. And he said he actually wasn't in the arena to witness the goal. But like you said, you were. How did you feel in that moment? Like,
So you heard him say Iggy? I was gonna ask that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was so nerve-wracking, because in overtime it felt like, how old were you guys? You were kids still, right? But
Oh,
you remember
I think I was
Yeah.
I was born in 02, so I was about 8.
8.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah,
I was
8.
7.
So are you guys old enough to be nervous?
I was nervous. I still remember the moment where I was, all that. I still remember it.
Yeah. So I mean, I remember thinking that the whole Olympics depends on this outcome, right? Like the Olympics had been a huge success for Canada. They won the most gold medals ever by a host nation. I think they broke the record with that hockey gold medal. But if this is Canada. So if you lose in hockey,
Yeah.
US, the whole thing would have a bitter ending. And the fact that they won, I think, sort of just saved, those memories of that Olympics as being incredible forever. But I was so nervous. Everybody was so nervous. And the hard part of being a broadcaster, you asked me how I felt in that moment. When the goal was scored, we were kind of in the stands. Our set was built right into the stands. There were people right around us. Everybody went nuts. I wanted to go nuts too, man. I wanted to pour a beer on Bob McKenzie's head, but you can't, because you're a professional broadcaster, and so you have to keep it in. Although I have to tell you, the other guys on the panel were all jump up and down hugging. I think Darren Pang and Nick Kyprios, we had a combined network panel that time, and but I was. And the other thing is, you can't really enjoy the moment because automatically I start thinking about what I'm going to say about it. Right? You had one of the greatest moments in Canadian sports history. So what am I going to say? How am I going to properly put this in perspective? And I don't even really remember what I said. I don't know if I got it right or wrong.
Blacked out.
Nobody cared, right? Because Canada won the gold medal and everybody was drunk and happy. But it was a really, yeah, just unforgettable. And I hosted the closing ceremonies that night with Lisa LaFlamme, and they were really hokey. I don't know if you remember this, but it was an Australian guy who directed it, and it was kind of a bunch of Canadian stereotypes like giant inflatable moose and beavers and stuff. And we'd gone to the dress rehearsal the night before, and I remember thinking, if Canada loses tomorrow in hockey, like everyone's gonna hate this closing ceremony. They're gonna be pelting them with garbage because it's all this lame. But because Canada won, everyone kind of said, "Oh, let's just roll with it and party," right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned earlier you're most known for your hosting on NHL games and stuff like that. Um, you just mentioned how everyone started going wild on the panel when Crosby scored that goal. What happens when you guys do the Leaf games, whatever? Do you guys watch the games all together? And how do you guys plan to talk during intermission? Like, how do you decide what to talk about?
Yeah, we watch them. Just like, I think that's always the coolest part of my job, is that I get paid to just sit and watch hockey games with a bunch of people that I really like and respect. So we're doing this on a day after we did a Leafs game. So on the panel last night was Jeff O'Neill, Cheryl Pounder, the Olympic gold medalist, and Darren Dreger. And we, do a half an hour pregame show, and then we sit around and watch the game. And basically what'll happen, we have a producer there. His name's Puffy. He's a guy on my podcast as well. And his basic job is to write down the stuff that our panelists find interesting. Like, let's say, you know, I was thinking of an example last night. So Morgan Riley was having a really good night, scored a goal, had a bunch of chances. So Cheryl was keen on talking about Morgan Riley. So every time he made a play, she goes, mark that to Puffy. And then near the end of the period, she'll say, put together all those Morgan Riley plays for me. And then when we get to the intermission, we'll talk about it. And we just try to have an off the cuff discussion, but there has to be a little bit of organization to it. Like, I know in my head that Cheryl's talking about Morgan Riley, and that, you know, Jeff's going to talk about the Leafs power play, and Darren's going to talk about the goalie, or whatever that may be. So we have you have to, just to make video match up and everything, you have to organize your discussion, but then we hope it goes, you know, free flowing from there.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you, the quiz is a very iconic part of the TSN broadcasts. How long has it been a part of the show?
The evil quizmaster will be very happy. I'll pass that on to him. A lot of people, I'm the evil quizmaster, which I'm not, right? Like, basically, the short answer to that is 17 years.
Wow.
Long answer to that is, we had a guy who used to be the managing editor. He stepped back a little bit now, but he's kind of retired, but he still does the quiz. His name's Steve Dryden, and he looks like Larry David. And really smart, incredibly smart hockey guy. And he, back in 2007, he, you know, one night was just trying to think about something new to do for the intermission. And he said, why don't we do a quiz? And really his reason for doing that was that, you know, sometimes we would start talking about one topic and we talk about it for 6 minutes. And he didn't like that. And he felt like we were missing all this stuff. So he felt like the only way to get us to talk about like 4 topics was to come up with these questions to make sure we answered them. And so
Manipulating.
but he only wanted to do it once. And so I'll take credit that he invented the quiz, but afterwards I said, you know, we should do that every week. And I saw this light bulb go off in his head, and he said, yeah, we should. And so we have for 17 years. And I think he's right. Like, it's an excuse. You know, we dressed it up with questions and answers and stuff, but really it's just an excuse to talk about 4 different topics that maybe you wouldn't talk about, right? And there's always one stupid one in there. Last night we talked about what character would play Jeff O'Neill in his life, like that. Yeah. But so there's always some goofiness there. It's a chance to have some fun, but, you know, it's a chance to cover, you know, we might not talk about Jack Hughes on a normal broadcast if we're doing a Leafs, but this is a chance to throw in a question about Jack Hughes, so the analysts get to talk about this guy who's, you know, becoming a superstar.
Yeah. You said some people thought you were the quizmaster. When I was a kid, I actually thought it was Bob McKenzie, even though he was answering some of the questions.
I'm sure like he looked like a master, but yeah, no, there really is and I have a lot of fun with, you know, Steve. We call him the evil quiz master. I make fun of him. That's become half the fun of the quiz, is to relentlessly mock the quiz master. You know, I keep every year, I think every summer we go, should we kill this thing? But I don't know. I just think it's a lot of fun. And I'm sure there's a few people out there that are sick of it or hate it, but I think most people like it. Yeah. And, you know, it's fun.
Do you have a good Bob McKenzie story? Because he's obviously such an icon.
God, I got so many.
Maybe not those double entendres.
No, I won't give you one of those. I mean, I'll give you one about like how good the guy is.
Yeah,
like,
that'll be nice.
You know, he was in a, you know, he stepped away as well a little bit. He sort of retired, but when he was in like the Bob McKenzie prime, like the original insider, he had the best contacts. Like, I swear, guys would call him about trades, general managers, assistant general managers, like right after they happen. Like, he'd always get them
before their wives. It's Bob and then their wives.
Yeah, really. Like, one trade deadline early in the years of Trade Center, like I think maybe 2005, 2006, something like that. I can remember that there was a GM, I think, had told me this later, that he did a trade and he was still on the call with the other GM. So let's say you know you're trading whatever a center for a first round pick or something. And so the GM's on the phone going, okay, so we're going to do it, right? We're sending Joe Smith to you for a first rounder. And I guess one of the assistant GMs like texted Bob. And so Bob, they have a TV in their office, and Bob comes on and goes, yeah, the Oilers have just sent a first rounder to Nashville and the guy's still on the call. And the guy's looking at the TV going, what the hell? Like, this just happened 10 seconds ago. And Bob McKenzie already has it.
Oh my God.
But, he's just, he's an awesome dude. I think he's one of my best friends in the world. And I think that's one of the things I value most about my time. I didn't necessarily want to be a hockey host. When I came to TSN, my dream was to do football play-by-play. And I started doing it. And then the hockey job just kind of fell into my lap, which is another story, kind of like the broken rib story. But one of the real blessings, besides all the things I've gotten to do, is to get to be great friends with Bob, because he's been a mentor to me, and we're golf buddies now. We've gone on golf trips to Cabot together, and he's a pure one of a kind guy.
I just want to ask you, TSN hasn't had the rights for NHL for some time now. Do you remember how you felt when you guys lost the rights?
Yeah. Awful.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst weeks of my career. I went to a movie with my daughters. I had 2 young daughters at the time. They're older now. And I turned off my phone, obviously, during the movie. And I turned on my phone, and there was a message from Bob saying, could you call our president? His name was Phil King, because I think we lost the rights, and I'm trying to confirm it. And I texted Bob, and I'm like, that can't be possible, right?
Wrong number.
And said, while I was in the movie, he's like, yeah, I already confirmed it while you were still in the movie. So it was very strange, because we'd done it for whatever 10, 12 years, and I thought we'd done a really good job on it. But in many ways, I think it worked out. We still do a ton of hockey, obviously. I hope most of your viewers are in the Leafs region, so they see us do Leaf games. We do Habs regional games, Senators regional games, Jets regional games. We do the World Juniors, World Championships, Women's Worlds, and all that. So we still have a lot of hockey on our airwaves. It's just, some people in Alberta don't see us nearly as much as they used to, or they don't have the national games. But personally, for me, it was kind of a blessing in a sense, because that's what allowed me to do. When we had the national rights, that's all I did was hockey. When we lost the rights, it gave me a little more time and let me get back into football, to cover the Grey Cup and the Super Bowl, and to cover the Masters, and to do things like the World Cup. I probably wouldn't have been able to do the World Cup if we still had the national rights, right? And so I never got into the business to be a hockey host. I wanted to cover a lot of sports and get to do a lot of interesting events. And so I think in many ways it was kind of like a blessing in disguise that, I'd love to get the national rights back in a couple of years when it's back up, and I hope TSN does. But I've really enjoyed all the other stuff I've gotten to do.
So obviously we talked about a lot about your career, your main missions, but you've done quite a bit of side quests in your lifetime so far. One of the big ones being, I just found this out yesterday, research for this interview, that you got the key to the city to Ottawa. So you received the key of the city. I don't think you had that on your bingo card by any means.
Doesn't open anything, by the way.
Figured.
Well, what was your reaction when you first found that out?
Yeah, that was really cool. I got I think an email from the mayor of Ottawa, and it didn't make any sense to me. I can remember
spam email.
Looking at my phone, going, "What?" Because keys to the city are kind of silly things, but in my mind, like, a key to the city goes to like an astronaut, right? or a police officer who saved a bunch of lives, or something like that.
Or James Duthie.
Yeah, some guy that talks about the Leafs power play doesn't make sense to me, right? and my friends still kind of make fun of it. They thought it was hilarious, but we went and I invited all my buddies, all my local Ottawa buddies, and we had a really good party. They ran up the bar tab on me really bad. And the other thing was, I thought it was going to be like a simple ceremony where you show up and the mayor hands you the key, but they like big pomp and circumstance where
House of Commons.
Oh no, but you're in City Hall and they have these pipers pipe you in and all this official stuff, and it was very strange, but extremely like humbling, and I'm a very proud Ottawa guy, so it was kind of neat that it happened in my city. I always think that maybe they gave it to you in a big framed thing that I'll take it out and like wear it around my neck like a wrapper when I go back to the city.
The stage names goes back to Jake. Stage name.
That's right. So that was very, very strange. But also, my mom's still alive. My dad passed away. My mom's 90 and she got to come, and that was kind of the coolest thing. Is for her, she'd been in Ottawa most of her life. I think to see her son, she got a much bigger kick out of it than me.
That's nice.
Do you get any sort of benefits from having the key, like unlimited Tim Hortons or something like that?
We were thinking about doing like one of the goofy stories that I've done on TSN, but when I go back to Ottawa with the key and see what it opens, and do a little bit on that. But I had too many. Like there's an old strip joint on the market. I see if the key worked into that, but no, they didn't. Bosses didn't think that was a good idea.
You obviously you're also an author.
Yeah.
You've published 4 books. 4 books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What was your inspiration for writing these books? And because you didn't stop after one, you just kept going.
Yeah. I thought, when I did the first one, I'm like, God, I'll never do one of these again. It's way too much work. But a couple of years go by, and you said, and there's something about a book that, this is going to sound corny, but is this
I
just
got
audio?
the Bob McKenzie one here. I'm still going through that one.
I'll give you one next time I see you guys. But
that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Is this just for your podcast just audio, or is it video?
It's video too.
Okay, so I'm not trying to plug my book, but
you can do it all you want.
Go ahead.
When you get it, I'll find these in stores. It's been a few years now, but like when I do in television, it has no permanence to it, right? Like, you go do a show like we did last night, and then it goes poof into the world, and it's gotten. And there's something about a book that it's kind of forever. Like, it's something that maybe my grandkids will read or pick up someday. And the work that goes into it is, put it this way, I get paid way more for television, like about 100 times than I would for writing a book.
$5 and a handshake.
Yeah. My advice to anybody who think about writing a book is it's got to be like a labor of love. You got to really want to do it.
Hmm.
It feels like you've made like a little tiny piece of art. I'm not sure many people would describe my writing as art, but you've created something that has a little bit of permanence to it, and that's the part I really like about it. But it's a ton of work. But I love writing, and that's the one. When I got into TV full time, I missed writing. And so I do like doing it, but it's also torture. Any writer will tell you it's torture.
Yeah.
A quick story for any maybe listeners who love writing or want to write.
Mm-hmm.
Rick Riley, who used to be a great writer for Sports Illustrated. I grew up reading, when I was growing up, Sports Illustrated was the biggest thing. I got it in my mail every week. I would read it from front cover to the end. Now digital's killed all of that stuff, but Rick Riley was a great writer. He wrote the back page for Sports Illustrated, wrote great columns, and probably inspired me to write some of the way I write. But he wrote he wrote once that his son, he had an 8-year-old son, said to him, like, try to, Daddy, explain your job or whatever. And he said, how long does it take you to write your column every week? And he goes, about 2 hours. And the kid said, well, what do you do for the rest of the week? And he said, worry about those 2 hours. And that's the best way that writing could be described, I think.
Yeah, that's
It,
a pretty good way to put it.
you never stop thinking about it. You're lying in bed thinking about it. You wake up thinking about it. And the actual writing is great. It's all the thinking about it that bothers you.
Mm-hmm. You've won several awards for your broadcasting abilities as well. That's another thing you probably didn't expect when you started as a broadcaster. Um, do you consider yourself to be famous now? Is that something that you
Yeah,
consider?
do you get like stopped a lot in public? I'm actually curious about this.
Okay, so no to the answer about the famous question. I mean, I, I always tell people that I think if you want to use the word fame, that my level is the perfect, like Canadian cable sportscaster is the perfect like Z level celebrity, right? Because you get benefits from it. People do recognize you, but not enough that it's ever a real pain. You know, once in a while, like at a hockey game or a World Juniors, you might get a lot of people at once that want a picture or something like that, which is totally fine.
But you can
But
go to
for,
like vacation and stuff and not get, you know.
yeah, although it was fascinating, I was in like Canadians travel, man, because I was in Rome in September and just walking the streets of Rome, probably, 20 or 30 people said hi to me. So you do get a little bit of that. But on a normal day, like, okay, go to the grocery store, somebody will be like, hey, how about the Leafs? You know what I mean? Somebody might ask for a selfie, but it's never like I don't know the people that are actually famous. I don't know how they deal with it. I don't think I could ever like I watch Taylor Swift now, and
Huh.
you know, restaurant for dinner, and there's 500 fans standing outside the restaurant. It's insane, and I really do understand how people can feel trapped by that. I'm never going to be at that level or anywhere. I always say it's the I get a free round of golf once in a while. Somebody
That's
might
all you
buy.
need.
Uh, Actually, people always want to buy me shooters when I'm in a bar, and I hate still lightweight drinker. So if you ever see me in a bar, please don't buy me a shooter. I save your money because I'm throwing them over my shoulder half the time.
Oh man. Lost my train of thought here with all these jokes. You've written a lot of books, been in some funny skits on TSN. We didn't get into that, but music videos. You obviously play a lot of golf. Nico and I actually think you're undercover hilarious. You should be a comedian. Is there anything you
It's
thought of
honestly,
doing? You have anything you thought of doing like after your career as a broadcaster?
I always wanted to write screenplays. That was kind of my hidden desire. Um, just a second, buddy. Sorry, my dog's starting me. Hold on 1 second. Give me 10 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead.
no problem.
Um, you
Hey.
Oh, another surprise guest.
hold on. Is old, uh,
Oh.
Oh,
disabled, and this is my crazy one, and he wants to go for a walk right now. I always wanted to write screenplays, like write movies, but I don't know that I'm probably too late in life, and I probably don't have any good ideas anymore. The other kind of thing I love is writing songs. And when I was younger, I wrote a ton of songs, which I still have packed away somewhere. But I wasn't. My dad was a really talented musician, but I never played an instrument. I played a little drums in high school, but I wasn't very good. And so I don't know how to write music, but I have the tunes in my head. And that's one thing we've done at TSN. One of my great buddies at TSN is a guy named Lester McLean, who's a musician. And if you guys have a chance to YouTube, I don't know if you've ever seen before. We wrote a song. I wrote a song 10 years ago called Puck Over Glass.
Oh, I remember that.
So we were in the
When was that? Like 2013, 2010?
probably around there. There was a ton of over glass penalties in the playoffs, and we did this lame like tote board on the. And I was trying to think of a fresh idea. When I was driving home from work one night, I said I should write a song. And by the time I was home, like it takes a half an hour for me to get home from work. I had the song in my head. So I get a lot of melodies in my head, and I can write lyrics, but I don't know how to put them to music. And my friend Lester is super talented, and he puts them to music. And we did this thing this year, really stupid country song called "Bad for Bedard."
Oh, it's such.
amazing.
Is it on
Amazing.
iTunes?
Lester was supposed to put it on iTunes. It's definitely on YouTube. Um, I don't on iTunes
Let
because
me know
people
when it gets on iTunes. It'll be right on the playlist.
People wanted to buy the song, which was funny. But this was the first one I actually sang on. On the others, like Lester would do the singing, and I would just lip sync or whatever, or whoever was in the video. But I do love writing songs. I don't pretend that could ever appear on stage singing them, but I guess I have like a secret ambition to actually write a real hit song that somebody else would perform. Like I could write a Swiftie breakup song.
Oh man. Is it me or you, Nico?
No, I'll take this one.
Go ahead.
So now that we kind of went over your whole career and your high school life, is there anything like looking back that you maybe would have done differently, or maybe wished that you did?
Well, in the small, the small answer to that is there's things I've said on air I wish I hadn't said. You never have a perfect show, but overall, it's hard for me to regret anything considering everything I've been able to do. I feel like so incredibly lucky. When I was in Ottawa, that kid you were talking about, the local news was still kind of a big thing. And I remember sitting there watching the local news when I was 15, 16 years old, watching the local guy do sports. There was a guy named Brian Smith who did the local sports in Ottawa. And I said, man, if I could ever have his job, I'd be king of the world, right? If I could ever report on the Ottawa Rough Riders and the Ottawa 67s, that would be the greatest job ever. Yeah, I wasn't an ambitious kid. I never thought about, working for TSN and covering big things. I just wanted to cover like local Ottawa sports. And so, if 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 that little 15, 16-year-old kid could see what I've been lucky enough to cover and all the breaks that I've gotten to do those things, I mean, I think he'd be overwhelmed. So it's hard to really regret. I guess if I was to be,
I mean, that's a pretty fair answer.
it is, but the thing, I guess I would have liked to known if I would have been really good at football play-by-play. Like
because that was your thing, right? That was your big dream.
So I did like a dozen CFL games, and like again, if you'd met me, when I was 19 or 20, or I guess once I was in university, I would have said my dream would be to do NFL play-by-play. I love the CFL too, by the way, but so I did about 10 CFL games, and I think I was okay. It takes time to get good at it. I did a bunch of NBA games as well, but then the hockey job came along, and when someone offers you the job hosting hockey nationally in Canada, you just don't say no to that. And I think I probably made the right move. Like, I don't think I ever had the great voice, that a Rod Smith or some of the great commentators in the States. So I might have very well sucked at play-by-play, and maybe my career would have come crashing down in no time flat if I'd gone that direction. But there is a little piece of me that always wonders if I could have made it doing play-by-play.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of an episode that I don't think will ever be topped.
Oh yeah.
You were hilarious.
Oh yeah. I can't stop laughing.
Yeah.
Can't wait to edit this video over.
We want to thank you for coming on with us today, and we hope you had a great time with us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks. Yeah, you guys are awesome, and I'm sorry it took so long to finally arrange.
Worth it.
Shot the entire time, but no, my pleasure, and thank you for putting up with my technical problems, for listening to all my stupid stories.
No, thank you. Your stories were awesome. Take care. Thanks so much.
Okay, boys, all the best, man. Keep in touch.
Yeah,
Sure. That was James Duthie. It was a huge honor having him on, and we hope you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you're new. All our socials will be in the description, and we hope to see you guys next time.